Hi there. My name is Eugene Hernandez. I'm the Deputy Director here at the Film Society. I'm excited to moderate this conversation. Why don't I bring down our participants in today's conversation, Mr. Tarell Alvin McCraney, Mr. Barry Jenkins, producer Adele Romanski, producer Dede Gardner, producer Jeremy Kleiner. All right, thank you all for doing this, and thank you for joining us. Just as a bit of background, this format of talk, we do these talks every night during the festival, they're free. This format, this making of format, is really meant to give the audience insight, background, history, context. But before we do that, how many people have already seen the film? Okay, and how many people are going to see it in a little while tonight? Okay, so I sort of expected we'd have that kind of split in the room. And so, we'll talk about the film in a way that doesn't give away too much, but that gives people a context, again, background, and a real understanding of the collaboration that took place. That's one of the key terms that we talk about a lot. We're starting a program tonight within the context of this conversation. Our Artist Academy program starts tonight. So a number of our artists who will be here with us for the next 3 days, sitting with other artists like yourselves, talking about collaboration, talking about creative process, will be intently listening in as well. And they're seeing the movie at 9 o'clock today. I already warned Adele that I would start with her.
Which I appreciated. Thank you.
But the reason I wanted to start with you is that something that Barry said in Telluride piqued my interest, or made me even more curious, and maybe you can help me flesh out the story. But the element that I remember was something about a G chat or a Skype chat or something, where you were checking in on him and saying, "What are you working on?" Or
I mean, I think he specifically said I shamed him into making a movie.
Right. I didn't want to. Yeah. Go ahead. Maybe you could flesh that out for us.
But what really happened is that we started having. So Barry and I have known each other for about 15 years now, since we went to college together. And about 3 years ago, we started getting together on Google Hangout like twice a month to just talk freeform, like ideas, with the intent of landing on something that would be his next feature. And we didn't know it was going to be this particular story, but that was, basically how we went about it.
And as a producer, this is where sort of get into process and sort of creative inspiration, collaboration. Tell me about your own thought process, now that it's all over, about how you provoke an artist, for lack of a better word, how you encourage, how you push, shame.
I feel like that's a Barry question more than that's a me question. I am persistent, I will say that.
Well, what was it about Barry then? What was it about wanting to?
She's married to my cinematographer, so if I eat, we all eat.
What?
You sit right next to me. You couldn't hear that?
No, I didn't. What was it about Barry?
Sure.
Sorry.
No.
Well, Barry was so. I guess maybe I don't know if this is relatable for everybody, but I think when you go through a film program like we did, there's always the kid who kind of, year after year is making the best work in the class, and Barry was always that person to his class, I think. And so when he made Medicine for Melancholy, which I think further solidified the idea that he was a true artist and a real unique voice as a filmmaker, we all wanted, I'm sure you all wanted, I wanted, James, my husband, our cinematographer, wanted to see him take the next step and do the next project. I know you guys wanted to see that too. So I think that's where it came from, really. It was from a place of feeling like the world would appreciate to see the next Barry Jenkins film.
Barry, did you feel like you how did you feel about the poking, the checking in? Did you need that?
Yeah, I thought it was cool, you know.
Yeah.
Because, in addition to being a great producer, like she said, we had a relationship that had been in existence for a long time. Like, her husband's one of my best friends, and probably my closest collaborator. So I knew it came from, despite the fact that she was pushing, that it came from a very genuinely caring place,
Yeah. Did you perceive it as pushing, or did you perceive it as
it was
therapeutic?
pushing. No. She's being nice now, but I think the first conversation was, "What the fuck are you doing? Why haven't you made a fucking film?"
I think I said you need to make a movie.
No. Don't sugarcoat it.
I remember that
because
I
we're at
said-
Lincoln Center. Don't sugarcoat it.
That's brilliant strategy, actually. I don't even think I knew that particular turn of phrase. That's very smart.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Tarell, how do you and Barry know each other? Tell me about the conversations you guys had that led to the two of you ultimately working together. Do you remember the early conversations you had?
Yes, because they were few. I think August Wilson spoke about who the playwright, African American playwright, talks about. Someone asked him a question like, "What do you know about Africa? What are you trying to do about Africa?" And he said, "It's not what I know about Africa. It's what Africa knows about me. It's what the story is telling about me." And I think that's where we meet. We're learning about each other's day to day, actually right in front of you. Like, I say something, he goes, "Did that happen?" And we go back and forth. But it's through the story that we know each other. And I think we have a kind of meeting ground there that, we don't have to sort of go, "Me too," but we have "Me too" moments often through the film. And so the first conversations were more like, "Hey, I really love this story. There's something in it. I don't know what it is." And I said, "Okay." And that was the end of that conversation. And then he came back and he was like, "I found something. I found my way in." And I was like, "Great." And that was the end of that conversation. And then he sort of sent a draft. I'm not being hyperbolic. They really were these very sort of brief and to the point conversations about caring about the work and being intimate about the work and coming to it fully.
So just to take a step back for a moment, I asked you this just a moment ago. In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue was a piece that has been talked about as a play. It wasn't staged. You wrote it in 2003, you told me.
I wasn't trying to fool you.
No, I'm just trying to, I was curious because what you wrote it in 2003, and then what was happening with it, I guess, is the question.
Well, I was writing a lot of things in 2003.
Yeah.
So I lost my mother in July of 2003.
Uh-huh.
And I also had graduated from undergrad. And I'd applied to the Yale School of Drama. And at that time, I'd sort of tried to, I was that kid who's always trying to come in ready.
Uh-huh.
Similar to the drug dealer in Moonlight, the drug dealer in my life told me, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Yeah.
So I tried to come into school ready. And I knew that we would have to take a film class. I knew that we would have to have playwriting class. So I wrote this play called The Brother Size.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote this piece in Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue. And I wrote this other play that I can never remember the name of because it was really bad and I kind of threw it away somewhere. But I wrote them in order to be ready. So the first day I would have work. And Moonlight, I'd been writing plays since I was in high school. And my high school theater teacher then said to me, if the play keeps coming to you in images, it's not a play anymore. That's not a play. That's not the world of plays. If it keeps coming to you in stark images like that, you have to find the language to do it. So Moonlight, I already knew it wasn't a play.
Okay.
It already had language that meant, it was non-sequential. It happened on top of each other. There was juxtapositions that we just could not pull off in the theater. So I sort of put it aside. I sort of went, this is a piece that's very autobiographical, very much about my life, me trying to piece out artistically events in my own life. I don't know what to do with it just now, so I'll put it over here.
Uh-huh.
And and that was and then I went off to grad school.
Wow. I want to come back to the story and the writing process in a moment, but I want to bring Dede and Jeremy into the conversation because another sort of infamous or famous story around this particular film says that, I guess my understanding
Is it really
is,
that infamous?
I don't know if it's infamous. It's a fascinating moment, I guess. Apparently, because I think I was there, Barry moderated a conversation at the premiere of 12 Years a Slave at the Telluride Film Festival. Was that the first time you guys had ever met?
No. We yeah, I mean, we had seen Medicine for Melancholy, upon its release, basically, and thought it was an incredibly beautiful film, and wanted to work with Barry, like a lot of people did and do, and as happens, we didn't really hit on the right project. We bandied some stuff about. We went back and forth for a couple years, I think, and then we sort of lost touch. So there was a gap between when we saw him at Telluride and when we had last seen him, which made us reconnecting with him feel, as sometimes can happen, I think, a little even more special than it always is to see Barry. And that kind of reunion of just conversation and talking about what we were hoping to do and working on, that exchange led to ultimately us being sent the script for Moonlight, the screenplay for Moonlight.
For context for the room, tell us what Plan B is. Tell us about your company. Just give us the foundation so we understand. People may not know, Dede, what Plan B Entertainment is.
We've been a film production company for about almost 13 years. Our partner is Brad Pitt, and we just are trying to tell some good stories. That's all.
So how did tell me about the first conversation you had with Barry about this particular project.
It was a sneak attack.
In what way?
You didn't really send it as a movie. You're like, I wrote this, but...
Exactly. Well, I guess was two parts, but when this got real, it was a sneak attack because I knew they had read the script, but I had no idea they were interested in working on it. I sent it as, hey, I'm back and I'm writing things. You should check this out. This was like months after Telluride. And then they were like, hey, you want to go out to dinner? I was like, yeah, I would love to go out to dinner. So I'm sitting there at this fucking dinner. I'm like, what? Why are we having dinner? And then it became very clear, oh, that's why we're having dinner? And so I went outside and started texting Adele. I was like, oh shit, this is why we're having dinner.
I remember you called me when you got home and you're like, so I think this happened.
Yeah. and it just got really real, like really quick after that.
But I would like to talk about the experience we had when we read the screenplay, which it's this one for us is we all love this so much, and it really was and is a really beautiful piece of writing, derived from a really beautiful piece of writing, and it felt totally epic, and also totally tender and emotional and intimate at the same time, which is an extremely odd juxtaposition, and it had a structural concept that was so beautiful and elegant and simple, and it felt uncategorizable in kind of the same way that I think that sometimes really striking work can be, where you can talk about it and what it is and you can describe it, but there's something beyond even how you would describe it that is a feeling or some kind of odd X factor that you're trying to put into words or conjure somehow. And now that I've hyped the screenplay to death, maybe you guys will enjoy the film too.
If this was a sneak attack, tell me about the conversation that the two of you had on the other end going into this dinner. What was your
It was just
intention?
you read something and it just felt ready. That's the best word I can put to it. Why isn't this being made? We should go make this movie. It didn't. It just wasn't elusive in any way. It was there, and we loved Barry as a filmmaker, and it had been a long time. And what do you mean you're sending it as a writing sample? We should go make the movie, That's rare when something just sort of presents itself as if it's ready to run out of the gate. But that's what this felt like.
And we also, we had a really great set of discussions with Adele about, coming together amongst ourselves and doing it. And that was a lovely process. And, that partnership that underpinned the making of the film was one of the lovely things that also has come out of this for us, is getting to know Adele, who's an amazing producer and doing amazing work, and we got a chance to, I think, learn a lot from each other, and feeling like that promise was there too, that we were gonna get to work on something we love with, on behalf of and with someone we love, and then learn from a producing partner. That was really a lovely thing.
Well, I want to ask then Adele to talk about the other half of that relationship, because I think, again, pardon me for feeling surprised that a company of, with the stature of Plan B, not to diminish the writing, but the point being that it's almost, I guess it's unexpected for some people that a company from Hollywood would engage with a project that comes from such an indie, quote unquote, place, because when you do, it obviously elevates the potential for the project, for the film, from all perspectives. But it also requires, as Jeremy just said, a collaboration. So maybe Adele, you can help us understand how that kind of collaboration works.
Yeah, I mean, it was surprisingly easy to work with these guys and for all of us to work together on the film. I think that and I remember Barry and I talking about this early on, like knowing, the history that you guys have as a company and the reputation and the kind of work that you're doing, and that could be a very scary thing, having sort of a partner come on board with that kind of stature and, potentially influence and opinions and whatnot. But I think we just decided to trust in the process and trust in these guys. And there was, I remember being very open, like a very open and sort of surprisingly beautiful relationship.
They're not on the panel, but I guess it's important to at least mention A24 because can you tell me where they came into the process, fit into the process?
Yeah,
They're distributing the film as well as.
Shout out to A24. I mean, they were an incredible partner throughout this movie, and incredible in so many ways. Incredible in this sort of speed of their commitment to this. The embracing the fact that it was to be filmed in Miami, not in tax credit state, Y and Z, which is not something to belittle. Movies are expensive. It's expensive to, so those are tough decisions. And that was, we've always admired the company and thought they were doing great work. And we, around the time that we read the screenplay was the time that they sort of amongst themselves, I think, were talking about starting to finance films and kind of own films, make them in addition to acquiring them. So that was another just like lovely circumstance that just was, a little unscripted. But we've known Daniel and David and John and Nicolette and the team for some time, and Noah Sacco, and they just believed, they believed, and they didn't. I kind of don't remember a moment where they were less than supportive of Barry's vision and doing what the film needed. The question was, what does the film need? And they would answer the question with what the film needs.
It's interesting because I asked Noah recently, Noah from A24, who I believe is in acquisitions, about taking the script to his colleagues, and his answer was very similar to yours, Dede, in that he said he read it, and it just made sense. I mean, he read it, and it was obvious that not only that they should do it, but that it was. I mean, he didn't say it's ready to go, but that was the effect. It was like, of course we're going to do this. This is just like, I mean, that's incredible. I want to switch gears again and go back to the writing process, the collaboration process. I guess I want to better understand what happens between 2003 and this piece being put aside effectively, and then the two of you.
It was that guy.
Okay, give us that.
It was that guy.
Component.
No, seriously, raise your hand. That guy did it. So, Andrew Havia, he's a co-producer. He's from Miami. He's with the Borscht Film Festival. And basically, I guess Tarell was kind of sitting on this thing, or it was in his cupboard or something.
You know, it's playwrights. You have things in your pocket
that nobody's ever going to see.
Where's your list of 20? There's a
Nobody's
list
ever
of 20
gonna see.
things that he was going to do previous, of course. And so, you know, there's things. Look, Moonlight is something that if you know my work, you know that every other piece is something where I've taken a feeling or a question that I have, and I've built a story around it, or I found the story to go around it. Moonlight was the opposite. There was all kinds of feelings, but there was story already there. And so I, for lack of a better word, couldn't find the right framework. So I had to leave it alone, because if I had just thrown it up against a wall, it could have been anything.
Well, then I guess my question is, why did you send it? How did you send it to Andrew?
Well,
what
because
was the process?
because Heavier was like, you are interested in film. Why aren't you making film? And I said, well, because the only thing that I have that comes to me in image is this piece that I can't finish. So read it, tell me what you think, and if you can help me figure out a way to make it, then we'll do it. And he said, okay. And the thing about Heavier is that he'll say, okay, and do this little smile thing, and you're like, what duende just walked out of the room? Like, you don't know what magical spirit just came into my life with this okay spirit. And then it disappeared, and I went to London and worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company and did other stuff, and one day I got a call, he's like, we're giving it to Barry. And I was like, who the hell is Barry? Exactly. Who Barry? And yeah, and then he said, oh no, and he sent me a link to Chlorophyll,
which is a short film I'd done in Miami with Borscht.
And asked me for another piece so they could work on. I think they were like setting us up for the okie doke. They were like,
definitely.
Be busy over here so we can make this happen. So Barry was doing, I think, post on Chlorophyll, or either finished it and it wasn't released, but they sent me like a Vimeo of it, and they were starting to do a little bit of the bust that I had written for them, and then they were like, we're sending Moonlight to Barry, and I was like, okay, well, he does good work, so maybe he'll like it. And then that's when I started to get to know who you were, that we'd grown up blocks away from each other and not known each other. We went to the same school at some point and didn't know, you know.
Did you have friends in common?
We
Probably.
do. We do. We found out today. Yeah.
Again, you're still learning.
He was like, Tori Cox. I was like, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Because he was the only kid in 4th grade who had braces. I was like, dude, you have braces. I was so...
Not me, Tori Cox.
Tori Cox.
Let's get that straight.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's continue that. Then what happens? Then what happens when you
I love telling the story. So originally, my idea was to give Tarell notes and for him to flesh out what I thought the best film version of the story was.
Was that how that was gonna go?
Yeah, which was because the play was like non-linear, jump back and forth in time.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, we should do one story at a time. And so we emailed a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. And then Tarell became a MacArthur genius. And once he was certified as a genius, he just had a lot less time.
There is no certification process. I keep telling anyway.
I call him a genius all the time, and he hates it.
See how this is? Go ahead.
And so then he got super busy. He had like a show at Steppenwolf, and then he had at the Public, and he's at Royal Shakespeare. And so finally, I just flew down to Miami because I was in Oakland all the time this was going on. And Adele and I got to the point where we had narrowed it down to these 2 projects, one of which was Moonlight. And I just flew down, and I was like, hey, man, let's sit down and talk about this. And we actually told the story earlier, and it was me pitching Tarell, like, let me do this. And then Tarell being like, all right, bro, stop. Just go do it.
I kept being like, okay, so you grew up on what street? Cool, that's dope. And you want to tell me about this? And he was like, yes. And so what I plan to do, I was like, yeah, do whatever. Now, who do you know? Like, I was just trying to like have a conversation.
I was all about business, man.
Clearly. I was tired. I had just directed Hamlet. I was tired. I wanted to drink coffee and talk about Liberty City. So that's how that conversation worked. And he maybe it wasn't even, it couldn't have been 6 months later.
No, it was pretty quick. I mean, it was like I had already booked my travel, and I was going to Brussels and I was gonna do the damn thing, and I just wanted to make sure it was cool.
He sent the screenplay, and I was like, this is good. And I think I sent back something like, hey, this is really good. I wrote a scene. Look at it, don't use it, use it. And he was like, yeah, let me talk to you about that. I was like, no, I honestly mean you don't have to use it. I'm only writing this because I feel like I should write something, all right? And then, but I felt all at once like the story was in, the thing that Barry won't say is that even though the story is less autobiographically him, he knew the world, he knew those people, and he took great care of them. And when he came to the story, he brought his full self. Like, he brought all of his powers. He brought his spiritual understandings, his cultural mores, as well as his intimate beliefs. And that's what made it pop. That's what made things happen. And there were times where I was like, Barry, do you need help? Do you need anything? What do you need? And he'd be like, no, I got it. We good, you chill. And I was like, all right, fine, but if you need something, ask. And it wasn't that he didn't need anything. I understand now. He had mined the piece for everything he needed. He had all the tools available to him. And so once I saw it, it was sort of extraordinary, because I was like, wow, he took care, great care. Nurtured is not even the word, I think.
Thanks, bro.
Was that
No
mining?
problem, bro.
Was that mining difficult, Barry? Was there?
It wasn't, man. That's the whole thing. It wasn't. No, and the way I describe this project is, I say that Tarell, it feels like he took these memories of my memories and he had put them into this dream state. And so for me, the process was waking up from a dream and then just journaling, and just making sense of it. It's kind of how I described it. When I went to Europe, I had planned to write something else, and I just took the play to sort of get myself writing. I thought, there's a framework. There's like a few scenes that I'm definitely going to have in. This will be a good thing to get me back writing, because I hadn't written anything in about 2 years at that point. And fucking 10 days later, I had the first draft. I mean, it just poured out. I mean, it was not difficult at all. And I wouldn't make that up. Like 10 days. I mean, because it was all I was doing. I had no friends in Brussels. I didn't speak the language. I mean, I had one bar, one cafe, and my flat. And it was my whole life was just adapting this script, and it just came out. It was not difficult at all, and I've never had that experience with the screenplay before.
Wow, I want to give the audience a chance to ask some questions to find out what direction they want to go. So I might interject a couple more questions, but cool. I want to sort of give a moment now to kind of switch gears and let folks in the audience ask a question. So there are two folks with microphones. Yes. So there's a gentleman here, the cap, 4 people. Yeah. We'll start with you. Welcome.
Hi. I had a question. I forget your name, Miss. In the black? Dede. At 24? Plan B.
Plan B.
Excuse me. You were saying that a lot of times films aren't ready to go out the gate. Those are the words you used. Like, what would stop a film from being ready to go, as opposed to the film that was brought to you, or the script that was brought to you that was ready to go out the gate?
So it's like, why was this one different?
Right.
Yeah.
Look, I think there's a lot of tangible ways to answer that question. Scripts take work, and revision is really important, and do you have the right filmmaker? There's also an intangible answer, and I don't know how to characterize this other than to say I've done it a long time, and I care deeply about words, and I care deeply about story, and I care deeply about filmmakers, and you kind of run on an instinct, sort of a curatorial mama bear instinct that, this story is humming, it is deeply alive, this person who's going to be at the helm is ready, the world is ready, the world needs this story. It's like a kind of a Chinese puzzle box. And that's the best way I know how to explain how I feel when I read something and can kind of see, okay, let's leap. That's probably not a very helpful answer, but I do mean it.
I also remember you guys saying, I don't know if you said it to me or I heard you say it to someone else, the idea that the script stayed with you. and you couldn't stop thinking about it and the sort of power and sort
I
of
wanted to see
importance
these
of-
characters. I wanted to know them. I wanted to be in this neighborhood. I wanted the result of this story. I desperately wanted that reunion. Like, I wanted to see it represented. So that's the best way I know how to do my job. It's not really practical, but it is how I do it. I don't know if that's helpful.
We'll go up to Jim here in the center. Yes, right in the center.
Thank you. Thank you. You white people, thank you. As a white person, I want to say thank you. I want to bring Marlon Riggs into the room for a moment, because not since Marlon Riggs has the total humanity of the black gay male been presented on the screen. And it's just for someone my age to see this film after watching the Jimmy Baldwin film, when he wasn't allowed, or he chose not to for whatever, to see this love story is so incredibly, incredibly moving. But I want to ask a practical question about casting. I mean, it's so beautifully cast, but a lot of people don't want to play these kind of parts because the public thinks that's who they are. And I want to give a particular shout out to the mother. I thought that the bravery of that actress.
Naomi Harris?
Yeah. So if you could talk on both sides of this panel about casting.
I just want to say one quick thing. James Baldwin is kind of in this equation somewhere, in the sense that the conversation that Eugene asked about at Telluride involved a shared love of James Baldwin that we happen to have with Barry, and so he figures in this soup somewhere.
Yeah, the casting was, it was a challenge. But, one of the first things that, when I read the piece, that I decided was I wanted to, again, do it with the structure where, you saw the character at 3 different ages. And I decided right away that I didn't want to try to cast someone who could play the character at all 3 ages. And, this isn't the biggest budgeted film, and we didn't have time to scour the globe and see 5,000 kids and all this stuff. And so I was looking for a feeling, amongst the different actors, particularly, all the 3 Kevins, all the 3 Chirons. And I'm a big fan of this Walter Murch book, In the Blink of an Eye. It's like the first text I read in film school that really, to me, sort of like gave me a really like footprint or foundation in what to sort of look for in the process of both casting and editing and directing. And so I felt like if I could find actors who had the same feeling in their eyes, that there would be a continuity. Because to me, it's the same character, but the characters become a different person in each chapter. So it's like, well, we're going to cast different people to play the same character. And the place where it became most pronounced was when Trevante walked in the room, who plays Black in the 3rd story. Trevante came in to read for Andre Holland's part, before it was Andre Holland's part. And it was kind of ridiculous, because in the film, he's pretty buff. He was even more buff when he came in to read. And he had on like this T-shirt. He's like jacked. And I remember he was reading, and I thought it was really sweet that he was reading Kevin's lines, because I was like, on what planet this dude think he's Kevin? But then as he was reading with our casting director, Yessi Ramirez, who was amazing, I started to hear the other side of the conversation coming out of his mouth. And I'll never forget, I turned to Adele. I was going to whisper to her, and she was passing me a note, and the note said, "Not Kevin, Black." and just something about waking up into that 3rd chapter and seeing just how the world had radically altered this person, about being able to have the same feeling in his eyes. I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to cast this guy, and we're going to be this bold with all the casting choices. And it kind of just fell into place from there. I mean, it was a lot of work, but it kind of fell into place from there. It's funny. I lived in San Francisco for 8 years, and I made a movie called Medicine for Melancholy that actually won the Marlon Riggs Award from the San Francisco Film Society. And I never heard. I'll be honest. I like to pretend that I'm this worldly director, but I never heard of Marlon Riggs before that point. And I very quickly got a radical education in his work. I consider myself an ally to the LGBTQ community. I'm a straight black man. And yet spending so much time in the Bay Area, it's hard to not develop, a sense of just aggressive empathy, And I feel like when I read Tarell's piece, I saw an opportunity to take that empathy and put it into action, because empathy can only get you so far. There's a ceiling. We all know a lot of people who've tried to make movies about others who aren't others themselves purely on empathy, and it only gets you so far. But I felt like if I could preserve the voice of Tarell's piece, which is why it's lovely to hear you say those things, because I tried to mine it for everything that was true and authentic and preserve those things, and then use my empathy to take it the rest of the way. So the fact that you even invoked his name in reflection of this film just means the world to me.
And in fact, the first book, we both grew up in Miami. We both grew up in Liberty City, which is the underserved community.
The South Central of Miami, I guess you could call it.
And I spent a lot of time at the library, and one of the first books that I ran across was Essex Hemphill's Ceremonies. I just remember finding it and remember feeling like I'm sure someone felt the same feeling about James Baldwin. There was that gasp of air you get in when you see somebody saying what Marlon Riggs and Essex says all the time, which is black men loving each other is a radical idea.
This is on the home screen of my phone. This is how much we rally for Mr. Baldwin around these parts.
Yeah, it's anyway. That idea about watching intimacy between black men has always been at the root of my work. And as you said, you think in the film world it's impossible. In the theater world too, I have had many times hired actors quit midway through because they say all of a sudden, oh, well, I got something else, but it's always because at some point you have to bring that intimacy on stage, and I fear for what will happen to me outside of this. Will you always think of me as being this intimate, this kind, this generous to another man on stage?
I forgot that part of your question. There were a lot of actors who auditioned for this film who just did not give a fuck what anybody thought. Straight, gay, the whole gamut that came out to audition. So, there was a little bit of what you're implying, but not a lot. We found that people, I don't know, the world is just ready for these kind of characters, and there were a lot of people who came out, with their heart and souls. And I think the people who ended up in the film, oh, good Lord. Just...
Okay, let's take some more questions. Raise your hand. Right next to Jim, same row.
Hello, thank you all for your work and for taking our questions this evening. Just wanted to give a shout out as a fellow South Florida native and wanted to give a compliment. I haven't seen the entire film, I've only seen the trailer thus far, and a compliment that I've heard and can agree with that I want to pass on is how beautifully shot and lit the actors are. Lighting black people in cinema and television is a constant issue, and it's beautiful, and I think it also gives a compliment to the original piece, Black Boys Look Blue in Moonlight. And I found that ironic and serendipitous at the same time. So I just wanted to give a compliment because cinematically it is a treat.
Thank you. The cinematographer is white, but he's been my boy for 15 years? So he knows. He knows. And the other thing too, we with the makeup, we didn't want, there was no powder on this show. I've grown up in Miami, people sweat. And to me, sweating is just a sign that things are alive, the body's replenishing itself. So this was, what was it, grapeseed oil? And we oiled everybody up. I was like, there's no powder on this show. Y'all gonna glisten. And you're right, James he took great care. Because, we have this character whose name is Black. He's got a very deep, dark complexion. And I think James he did such good work because Trevante just looks beautiful in this film, particularly in that car ride home, which is the first scene in the trailer. Yeah, he knew what it was, and he took great care with it. So I'll pass that compliment on to him.
over here, and then we'll go to the center.
Hello. I just wanted to say to everybody involved, I saw it yesterday, and I worked in distribution for 2 years, and I remember a lot of production companies would say, you know, some black stories just don't move me. I'm not moved. I don't get it. I don't feel anything. So when you talked about feeling something yesterday, I walked away feeling something attached to these characters. So I wanted to give a compliment and a question. The compliment is just thank you guys for making a body of work that explores black humanity. And my question is, what do you hope this film will do? What a conversation will you hope it evokes? And also, if you guys don't head out, I would love to grab a picture with you guys, because I think it's history in the making with you two right here. So what do you want to come from Moonlight?
So don't think, I think this is it for us. But no,
Because I ain't got no money and my phone is turned off.
is that what happened?
No, I'm joking.
Oh. I was like, I got a couple dollars for you. The film is difficult for me to sit through. I had to learn that the hard way. The first screening I went to afterwards, I was very happy and excited, and I think I hugged Barry. And Barry, you know, I don't often hug, but I hugged him and was like, yeah, this was great. And I walked home with my friend Andre. Andre Holland and I are very close friends, so I walked home and I was like skipping. And then about 24 hours later, I fell into one of the deepest depressions I've ever been in. I think, anyway, I say all this to say, watching those moments, those images are painful because they are real for me. That's my life. There are moments that are actual. There are things being said that were said. There are actions taking place that happen. Barry I think he texted me one night and was like, do you remember writing that? I was like, you would remember if you lived it. It never goes away. And so being in it is rough and beautiful at the same time. I get excited because I see poor Naomi Harris and I'm just like, hey, and I'm hugging her, and I know she's like, I'm not your mom. I know you, but and at the same time, I understand that if it is doing this to me, there is someone else out there who needs this too. It's not just me, and it's not just B. It's not just there are people there who need it and feel it too. And so for me, we're in service of that. We're in service of those people who are sitting through it going, how did they know? How do you know about that? How did you know I poured palm olive into the bathtub and boiled water because, the electricity was, or whatever it was? How did you know that? We have to, for me, that's, if we don't allow those people voice, then what are we doing? I'm sorry, I don't mean to co-opt us, but
no.
I feel that way, absolutely. And when Plan B sort of spoke to me about it and how passionate they felt about it, and for the same reasons, I was like, see, I think that's why we all work together so well, because at the end of the day, we may not know each other. I don't know everybody's kids' names, or they don't know my boyfriend's name, but we know that this story is speaking to us, and therefore it is allowing someone else to have voice. We're all under the same moonlight at some point.
Next question.
So this is for Barry. So those 10 days when you were in Brussels, can you kind of just walk through what that was for you and kind of how that worked?
It was pretty simple. I polled people. I think the question was, no offense to anyone who's Belgian, but I said, what's the most boring place in Europe? What's the most boring place in Europe in the summer? And the polling came back with Brussels. And I found, and it must have been true because I found an amazing Airbnb for not a lot of money. It was weird. It was kind of sad. The flat was cool, and if you go on the New York Times, they did this video of the 20 filmmakers under 40 in international cinema, and the video I did is basically me writing the script in Brussels. It's kind of a nice time capsule. It's exactly 3 years ago, and I did it from Brussels. I had a little digital still camera that had a video mode. But I would wake up and I'd make coffee. I'd hand grind my coffee. I'd make a little coffee. I'd have a cup. I'd write a few pages. Then I'd go and get lunch. And this was all, I was on this side street, and there was like total Barry Jenkins fastball. There was a cafe, there was a bar, and there was a menswear store. And so I was just like in heaven. So I literally would just, I would work my way down the block during that day. I would end up at Lower Byron, and I just wrote. I didn't have any friends, didn't have a cell phone. I only had internet at the flat. I mean, it was just like, there was nothing else, you know? And it was, her point was, you need to go somewhere where there's nothing else. And I didn't expect to write the script so fast, but it kind of just happened. I mean, it just came out, you know? And so I think I don't need to be in total isolation to do that, but it was total isolation and full immersion in the world of the characters. Yeah.
We'll go here, and then we'll go back there.
Well, thank you for everybody for the film. I haven't had the opportunity to see it yet, but you know, when you see a trailer, that you're just like, this is going to be a good one. Hearing all of you talk and just feeling like the warmness, and it just feels like a family that made this film kind of come to life. As a filmmaker, I know inevitably with any project, there's always like, you kind of get like moments of frustration where it's not so much like you're angry with the project or anything, but you're just kind of like, you feel like you're not doing it justice or something, like you just feel like you could be giving more. And I guess this is more a Barry question. I'd love to hear everyone's opinions, but since I direct...
I gave everything, man. This movie not killed me, but man, it came damn close. I gave everything.
I think my
bro.
question is really coming to like, obviously without getting into spoilers or anything, I really haven't seen it, so I can't like name a certain part where I would ask you about, but if there's like a moment either on set or before or in post where you're just like, really like something that broke you, you know?
Well, I don't know about broke me, but man, the first time I showed these guys the film, oof. Y'all remember that?
Yeah, but
Oof.
I was actually thinking of like.
The fact that we're sitting here is a miracle. because I was like, what do you
That's
mean?
not fair. No,
That's
not
very
fair.
fair.
No.
Well, based on the feeling I had that day, you know. I think I showed the film too soon. I showed them a cut of the film too soon. It wasn't ready, you know.
I did.
And the response was very adult because we're all family. It was like, you gotta do better. You know, go back in there. You gotta do better. You know, and we
feel the need to show it to them so soon. Did you need some kind of feedback?
No,
did
for
you need
sure,
someone to
for
tell you
sure.
that, or-
No, for sure. She's persistent, and we did need feedback at that point. Yeah, I mean, it was the same film, but it just wasn't there. And I think the thing of it was I wasn't trusting the film at that point because it wasn't as quiet as it is now. There's a lot of silence in the film that wasn't in the very first cut that I showed. Because you'd be shocked, but there's a very funny version of Moonlight. I mean, not totally funny, but there's like a lot more lightness, and just because we had such a good time making it. And I think the first cut of the film leaned way too heavily on that stuff. And there's such charismatic performers. There was a very easy way to tip some of these characters into likability. And we just had to work our way away from that. But I do remember that was the lowest point for me, bro, in the process of making this film. Yeah.
Is that a difficult level of trust? Is it difficult to reach that level of trust? And how do you give that kind of feedback, Dede and Jeremy, if Barry's being accurate and you felt like it wasn't ready? How do you do that? How do you encourage and also?
You know, this was like a sacred feeling experience, and I feel that there was always this working in the service of the film that we all had read and wanted to do, and when you are aligned in that larger, it sounds like, you know, a little grandiose, maybe sacred, but I mean, like there is a feeling that you have that is like bigger than you or something like that, and that then your conversation is about that other thing, not about, you know, everyone has agendas and egos and opinions, but as Adele said earlier, like, you know, Dede and I have been working together for over 13 years. We have a wonderful common language, and then we had that with Adele and Barry, and it was all very. It may have been difficult, but I don't think we other than the time we had the fight about visa, a sort of visa logistic thing.
Which worked out.
It's literally the only fight we ever had was about a visa.
We were aligned in some like endeavor together.
I think too, movies, you only get to put it out in the world once. And there seems to be a really arbitrary set of rules and regulations inside the industry about release dates and now and this and 10 weeks and man, DJ and guilt, and it's like none of that matters. It's like I think the only job we have is to create a harbor and hold it safe for as long as the movie asks. And if you do that, then I think you've done your job.
Yeah, and I will say, it was wrong of me to have that initial reaction, because from the very beginning, everybody, A24 especially, that was their whole mindset. You know, it'll be ready when it's ready. You know, and you guys take the time you need to get it ready.
Well, for the record, I don't think that you showed the film too soon. I think that moment was always going to have to come.
It's brutal.
It was going to be hard whenever it happened.
See, with my first film, I didn't have producers. I didn't have to do this, you know? It was like we toiled away for like 4 weeks. Like, here we go. We got a mumblecore movie. It's awesome, you know? This was a very, very different process.
Is part of that, Barry, because of your other partners involved in this project? Was it partially like, I gotta get something out there because people are waiting, or was it just?
No, it wasn't that. It was just, you know, the shoot. Everybody was so invested, and I will say they gave me the space to sort of toil away. And at some point, you know, we're collaborators. You know, you have to bring other people into the process to help you see things that you cannot see. And that was what began after, you know, we shared that first cut. I say we, myself and the editors, after we shared that first cut with you guys, and it only got better and better. Better and better is the wrong word. It became itself. You know, it just very rapidly became itself from that point forward.
There was a question up here. Yes, so let's let you get. This might be our last one. We're out of time. Go ahead.
It's actually for Tarell. I feel like you said that you fell into a deep depression after you first saw the film. And I think as a writer and as someone who has events happen to them that they have to write about all the time, do you feel like you've pulled from that muse from the film several times to be able to come back to it and say, okay, this happened and that happened, and just kind of bring yourself full circle?
No, I wish I could say that I've gone full circle. The film, because it's new, it's mining things that I have thought about and written about in abstract. But when it again, and have you seen it?
I'm not. I'm going to say it after this.
Okay, cool. When you watch it, the thing that Barry does that is impressive is that he takes these moments that may be the worst moments in a person's life and does exactly what Miami does to them, which is, I told this story earlier, one thing I remember specifically, these kids were chasing me, they were beating me up and they were throwing rocks at me. And they were like chucking these rocks and I was running for my life, and then they stopped throwing these rocks. And I looked around and there was a bunch of cars, and I realized that they didn't want to hit the cars, but they were still gonna hit me. But as I was standing there, the sun was like setting, and it was this beautiful blush and there was a breeze through the palm trees on 62nd, and there was Poncietta growing. I mean, that's the world I grew up in. And to make that real for people and myself again is kind of destabilizing. And it's one of those things that every time it comes back to me, it's like, whoa, do you understand? So I'm still processing. I'm still going, and I would be lying to you if I said I had gotten to a place where I can walk out upright. Even yesterday, just talking to some of the actors, I kind of like, it just destabilizes you in a way. And I think that's important. It's so important because, again, I could describe these things ad nauseum, but when you feel it, when you can make someone feel it, then it stays with you. Then it does what it did to Dede and Jeremy. It's something that you can keep thinking about on the subway, or, you know what I'm saying? So in that way, that's why I decided, I was like, look, I'm just gonna go and talk about the film for a while and be an advocate as much as possible, because it does the thing that I had been hoping for in that way.
Someone talked about Hello Stranger.
Yeah,
I have a question about Hello
very
Stranger.
brief. Yeah. So in San Francisco, I used to go to this soul night at the Makeout Room, and that song used to play, man. And so most of the music in the film, I sort of chose. I'm like really big about music, and I will say we didn't talk about the score, but it was composed basically a block away from here, in Nicholas Bertel's home studio. And that song just always it's just stuck in my head, man. And I'll give these guys credit because it's written into the screenplay, which that doesn't happen very often. Literally, the lyrics are written into the screenplay. And from the very beginning, we were all like, okay, we're gonna go get this song. And we actually, you're not supposed to do this, but we actually played the fucking song on set. Every take we did, and you're not supposed to do that. But I was like, fuck it, we're getting this song. And I remember the first day Andre Holland showed up to set, the sound guy came over to me. He was like, hey man, I'm sorry, but you got to stop the actor. He's like singing this song. I was like, what? He was in the kitchen when he's cooking for Travante. He's singing Hello Stranger.
Of course.
And I was like, oh, bruh, we're doing something right.
The thing you don't know is that we play this game called What's That Sample? Mm-hmm. And that song is sampled in Miss Fat Booty.
Oh, no. You're talking about the Aretha Franklin when he first walks in.
Hello Stranger sampled in another song that we played.
Mm-hmm.
And we played this game all the time. And so we were listening to that, and he was like, Barry got us in here listening to Hello Stranger. I was like, shut up.
It all comes full circle.
It's good times.
The film is Moonlight. We are so excited to have it here at the 54th New York Film Festival. Someone, before you clap, someone in this panel will tell me it opens in theaters
October 21st.
October 21st, and I say that for folks who will listen to this conversation on a podcast over the next few weeks, and it will give them a chance to write that date down and maybe hear the conversation after they see it as well. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And if you don't mind in the audience, stay seated for just a moment so that our guests can make their way. They've got to get across the street for a screening that hopefully a number of you will be able to attend. And thank you once again. Yeah.